This happened in late October, a few years ago. I was hiking alone in a national forest about 2 hours from where I lived. It was supposed to be a quick overnight trip on a trail I had done before. But around late afternoon, the weather changed fast. The sky went dark, the wind picked up, and within minutes, light snow turned into a full whiteout. The trail disappeared under my feet. My phone had no signal, and every tree around me looked the same. I remembered passing a sign earlier for an old ranger cabin off the main trail. It wasn't a visitor center, just a small emergency cabin used by forest staff. I figured if I could find it, I could wait out the storm. The storm was becoming so thick, it looked like static in front of my face. Then, through the trees, I saw a small square of yellow light. It was the cabin. I almost cried when I saw it. I ran to the porch, knocked, and called out, but nobody answered. Without thinking, I pushed the door open. The inside was warm. That was the first thing I noticed. A small wood stove in the corner still had fresh embers glowing inside. A lantern sat on the table. There was a half-finished cup of coffee beside it, and a jacket was hanging on the back of a chair like someone had just taken it off. I checked the room, the storage closet, and the cot in the corner. Empty. I told myself whoever had been there must have stepped outside or left in a hurry because of the storm. I added wood to the stove, shut the door, and tried to calm down. On the table, I found an old radio, some trail maps, and a logbook. Most of the entries were normal. Weather notes, supply checks, trail conditions. Then I reached the last page. The newest entry was from earlier that day. It mentioned the storm moving in faster than expected, then said knocking had been heard on the east wall again. The final line said not to answer after dark. I looked toward the window. It was fully black outside now. The kind of black where the glass turns into a mirror, and all you can see is yourself standing in the light. Then, like something out of a movie, I heard 3 knocks on the wall behind me. It came from the east side of the cabin, the same wall from the logbook. A few seconds later, it happened again. 3 slow knocks. I wanted to look outside, but something about that note stopped me. Then, the radio on the table crackled so suddenly, I nearly dropped my flashlight. A man's voice came through, weak and broken by static, asking if anyone was inside cabin 4. I grabbed the mic and told him I was lost, that I had found the cabin during the storm, and that I was alone. There was a long pause. Then the man asked if the stove was lit. I told him yes. He went quiet again, long enough that I thought the signal had died. Then he told me that cabin had not been staffed in 3 weeks. I looked around at the coffee cup, the jacket, the lantern, and the glowing stove. I told him someone had to have been there recently. The voice came back and told me to lock the door, close the curtains, and stay away from the east wall. I asked what was outside, but all I got back was static. I locked the door and pulled the curtains shut. For about a minute, the knocking stopped. Then it moved to the front door. This time, it was softer, almost polite. A voice outside claimed to be with the ranger service and said I needed to open the door. I didn't answer. The voice came again, telling me I wasn't safe in the cabin. That was what made it so terrifying. It didn't sound like some monster. It sounded like a tired man standing outside in a snowstorm. My hand was moving toward the lock when the radio crackled again. The man on the other end told me not to open the door. He said the rescue team was still 10 minutes away. Everything went silent after that. Then the doorknob started turning, slowly at first. Left, then right, then left again. I backed away until I hit the table. The knob stopped moving, and then the voice outside said my name. For the next 10 minutes, I sat at the table holding the fire poker from beside the stove. Whatever was outside moved around the cabin, dragging something along the wood siding. Every few minutes, it knocked on the east wall, always 3 times. I finally saw red and blue lights through the curtains. I waited until I heard a different voice calling for me. The rescue team searched around the cabin, but there were no footprints near the east wall. The only prints were on the porch where I had walked in. Later, I found out a ranger had disappeared from that cabin during a storm almost a month earlier. His jacket was still inside. His coffee was still on the table. The search team never found him. I don't hike alone anymore. In fact, I have actually never been back to that national forest. Friends have told me it was a supernatural experience. I don't really believe in the paranormal, but it's hard for me to explain what actually happened that night. I grew up in a rural part of Indiana where the roads were completely empty at night. During late summer, the cornfields around my town grew so tall they felt like walls on both sides of the road. I never thought much about them until one night in early September, when I was driving home from my cousin's house a little after midnight. I was about 5 minutes from home when I came around a bend and saw 2 yellow-white lights glowing deep inside the cornfield to my right. At first, I thought it was a tractor or maybe a truck, but there was no access road there. I slowed down and stared through the passenger window. The lights moved slightly, like someone was carrying them between the rows. Then, a third light appeared farther back, then a fourth. They all drifted slowly in a line, weaving through the corn without making sense. For a few seconds, all I heard were crickets. Then, I heard the corn moving. It sounded like someone dragging their hands along the stalks. I grabbed my phone and tried to record, but the screen kept going blurry. The lights kept moving deeper into the field until one of them suddenly stopped. Then the others stopped too. All 4 lights turned toward the road at the exact same time. That was when I locked my doors. A few seconds later, I heard a voice from inside the field. It sounded like a woman calling for help. She said someone was hurt and asked me to come into the corn. I almost believed it. The voice repeated the same words again, with the same pauses and the same tone. It didn't sound like someone panicking. It sounded like a recording pretending to panic. I put the car in drive. The second my brake lights touched the field, all 4 lights started moving toward me. The corn shook as they came closer, and I could hear stalks snapping in the dark. I hit the gas and pulled back onto the road so fast, gravel kicked against my car. In my rearview mirror, I saw the lights moving parallel to me inside the field, keeping pace even though I was driving almost 50. I didn't stop until I got home. I woke my dad up and told him there were people in the field down the road. He thought I was just scared until I told him exactly where it happened. That field belonged to a farmer he knew, and nobody should have been out there at midnight. My dad called the sheriff's office, and 2 deputies came out about 20 minutes later. By the time we got back, the lights were gone. The deputies searched the edge of the field and found no footprints near the road, no broken stalks, no tire tracks, nothing. Then one deputy found a narrow gap about 30 yards from where I had parked. It was barely wide enough for a person to slip through. The deputies went in with flashlights while my dad and I waited by the truck. They were inside for a long time. When one of them came back out, he told us to stay near the road. Later, my dad told me what they found. About 100 feet into the cornfield was a small cleared circle where the stalks had been pressed flat. In the middle were 4 battery-powered lanterns, all turned off. Beside them was an old portable speaker. One deputy pressed play on the speaker, and the same woman's voice came through. The same call for help, the same pause. the same exact words I had heard from the road. That should have explained it, but it didn't. There were no fresh footprints around the circle, no bags, no people, no vehicle tracks leading in or out. Just the lanterns and the speaker sitting in the middle of the field like someone had set them up and vanished. The farmer said he had seen strange lights out there twice that month, but he thought they were reflections from passing cars. A week later, he cut that section of corn early. He said the whole area had started to smell wrong, like wet clothes and old smoke, even though nothing had burned. I wish I could say I never saw the lights again. But 2 months later, after the corn had been harvested, I drove past that same road on my way home from work. The field was empty now. No corn, no place for anyone to hide. And still, in the middle of it, there was one small yellow light facing the road. I didn't stop, but when I checked my mirror a few seconds later, the light was no longer in the field. It was standing at the edge of the road. My uncle owned a piece of hunting land in northern Wisconsin, and every winter he let me use one of his old tree stands near the back of the property. It was a quiet spot, about a mile from the cabin, tucked against a frozen marsh where deer usually crossed at sunrise. I had hunted there plenty of times before, and I knew the walk by memory. Follow the logging trail, past the split pine, cross the shallow creek, then climb the stand before first light. Nothing about it had ever felt strange, until the morning I found someone already sitting in it. I left the cabin around 5 that morning. It was still dark, and the woods were silent except for my boots crunching over frozen leaves. I had a headlamp on, but I kept it pointed low so I wouldn't spook anything nearby. The air was so cold, it hurt to breathe. When I got close to the stand, I slowed down like I always did. That was when I noticed something hanging from one of the ladder rungs. At first, I thought it was a piece of orange fabric I had left behind, but when I got closer, I saw it was a glove. It was dark, stiff from the cold, and hanging by one finger like someone had placed it there on purpose. I looked up at the stand and froze. There was a person sitting at the top. I could only see the shape of them against the gray sky, hunched forward with their elbows on their knees. I thought maybe another hunter had wandered onto the property by accident, so I called up quietly and told them this was private land. They didn't move. I called again, a little louder. Still, nothing. I remember getting irritated before I got scared, because whoever it was had to hear me. I started climbing the ladder, thinking maybe they were asleep or drunk or something. But halfway up, I stopped. The stand smelled awful. Not like sweat or alcohol. Like wet clothes that had been left outside for weeks. I shined my headlamp up at the seat, and the person was gone. The stand was empty. I almost fell trying to climb back down. I know what I saw from the ground. Someone had been sitting there, but when I checked the seat, there was only a thin layer of frost, completely untouched. I backed away and called my uncle. He didn't answer, so I started walking back toward the cabin. I kept telling myself I had imagined it. Maybe it was a shadow. Maybe some branches lined up just right. But when I passed the split pine, I noticed fresh footprints in the frost beside mine. They were not boot prints. They were bare feet. Long, narrow footprints pressed into the frozen mud, like someone had walked through there without shoes. They followed my tracks from the direction of the stand. I picked up my pace. The woods still felt empty, but now every sound made me turn around. A branch cracking, leaves shifting, something moving far off in the brush. Then, from behind me, I heard the tree stand creak. I stopped and looked back through the woods. I couldn't see it anymore from where I was standing, but I knew that sound. It was the old metal ladder shifting under weight. Someone was climbing down. I ran the rest of the way back to the cabin. My uncle was awake by then, making coffee, and he laughed at first until he saw my face. We both grabbed flashlights and drove the four-wheeler back out there. By then, the sun was starting to rise. The glove was still hanging from the ladder, and the bare footprints were still there in the frost. My uncle stopped laughing after that. We followed the footprints away from the stand. They went through the trees, around the marsh, and stopped at the edge of the creek. Not across it, not in it. They just stopped. My uncle said maybe somebody had stepped onto the ice, but the creek wasn't frozen solid yet. The water was moving, and there were no prints on the other side. It looked like whoever made them had reached the creek and disappeared. That afternoon, my uncle called one of his neighbors to ask if anyone had been trespassing. The neighbor got quiet when my uncle mentioned the stand. Then he told us that years earlier, before my uncle bought the land, a hunter had gone missing back there during opening weekend. His truck was found near the road. His rifle was found leaning against a tree, but the man was never found.